Ars Libri is an everyman's journey, book by book, through Western literature. We read, retell, and reclaim our rich heritage. Be sure to subscribe to the show at arslibri.substack.com. So I've been nervous to do this book because it's a massive, epic book, and I feel like someone who went to the Vatican one time, and now I'm supposed to give a tour of the Vatican or St. Peter's Basilica. You can't do that. I can't do this book service or justice. I'm gonna try though. The book is called Orlando Furioso. This book is one of the most epic books I've ever read in my entire life. I can't believe this is not in classical curriculum. I can't believe these are books, this sort of book, like this one and the Nibelungenlied, I had to discover on my own after years and years of research and study. However, this is on par with the Iliad. It's on par with the Count of Monte Cristo. It's bigger in its scope than both of those books. Orlando Furioso, it includes classical mythology, medieval fantasy, and futuristic sci-fi all in one. It's basically the entire world of classical Greek and Roman mythology, all of the medieval world's knights and chivalry and romantic tales of Arthur and whoever else, plus the age of discovery all across the world. So the scope of this book includes all of North Africa, all of the Middle East, all of Europe, up to Britain and Scotland and Ireland and Iceland, all the way over to India, all the way to the Americas. It was written in the 1500s.
Okay, so that's right after
the
age of during the Age of Discovery.
During the Age of Discovery, okay. Yes. It's basically, this book, it's like the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, Canterbury Tales, every Arthurian romance, the Legends of Charlemagne, and Don Quixote all in one. I'm not exaggerating at all. It explicitly includes elements of all of those except Don Quixote, which I think was written after this, or maybe around the same time as this. But it's got some whimsical elements like Don Quixote. So this book really is amazing. When I first read it, I was overwhelmed by the scope of it, the grandeur of it. Sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's serious. There's comedy, tragedy, and there are a bunch of little tales and stories throughout the whole of it. So it's difficult to follow just one read through. I had to watch some commentaries from an Italian guy because it's written in Italian. So there's this Italian guy online. He does one episode per canto. There's like 40 something cantos. And I forget the guy's name. I'll put it in the show notes, but he does a great job. He explains the Italian in ways that I wouldn't have picked up. The book was written in the early 1500s in Italy by Ludovico Ariosto. And he wrote it for the House of d'Este, which is headed back then by a guy named Ippolito d'Este. Ippolito apparently was a great man, the house was a great house, and they were destined to do great things. It's sort of propagandish like the Aeneid was for Caesar.
Or like the Fairy Queen, perhaps? Like
the Fairy Queen for, was it Queen Elizabeth? Yeah, it's basically like that, where at the beginning of each canto, sometimes, he has something to say at the beginning of each canto, like he turns to the audience or to the court, whom he's singing this in front of the court. And he praises the virtue of women, or denounces the infidelity of men, or he praises the great house of d'Este. So it's often like, basically he's weaving this tale about the ancestors of the d'Este house and how they were, like Aeneid long ago, were going to do great deeds and eventually birth the house that now exists in you, Ippolito d'Este, and your house is destined to go on and do greater things still. So it's propaganda like that, but it's knowing it's not saying that's a bad thing, right? Like propaganda back then was like, yeah, of course I wrote this for the House of d'Este.
So is it in poetry or prose?
It's in poetry, but you can get it in either in English.
Okay, because that's one of the things that has stopped me from reading The Fairy Queen. From what you're saying, it seems like they're similar books written at the same time.
Around the same time.
Very close.
People were doing that.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, people during this time, we often talk about Western civilization, and then modern critical scholars come along and say, there's no such thing. You can read these books and see people very self-consciously and purposefully reaching back into their classical pagan, pre-Christian past and the Christian past and blending it all together into a new mythology or narrative for today's great houses and lineages and estates and our future together. For instance, one of the main themes, there's three main plots in this book. There's Orlando and Angelica. I'll come back to these. Orlando Furioso, Orlando and Angelica. There's Ruggiero and Bradamante. There's Charlemagne and Agramante. So this is all set with the backdrop of Charlemagne's battles against the Saracens, against the Muslims. And several times throughout the book, a man named Ronaldo is sent away to go gather forces to help Charlemagne's forces fight the Muslims.
Okay, but wasn't Charlemagne like 900 to 1000 somewhere in
it was
there?
written in the 1500s. It was set
but it's
prior to
set
that.
like 500
Yes,
years
it's like the Aeneid, where Virgil wrote it in the 100s BC, but it was set in the 900s or 1000s BC or something like that, right after the fall of Troy. That's what this is. It's the same kind of thing. So basically, it's set with the backdrop of Charlemagne's battles against King Agramante, who is of the Saracens. And several times, a guy named Ronaldo, who is also in love with Angelica, like Orlando is. There's several people in love with Angelica. But Orlando's sent away to go gather forces. He goes to England and Scotland and Ireland and rounds up all these forces. And the way that Ludovico Ariosto paints it, it's as though all of Christian Europe is uniting in one Christian massive effort to thrust out the Muslims. And so it's very Eurocentric in a favorable way, Christian-centric, Christendom-centric in that way. However, one thing I noticed in this book, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, there's very little animosity from Muslims to Christians as such. And there are things that actually unite them, like chivalry. In the first canto, two men fight each other, but then over love and chivalric duty towards this woman, they stop fighting and swear an oath to truce. And they're a Christian and a Muslim. So their religion differs them. Their origins differ. One guy's from North Africa, one guy's from Europe, but they have some commonality.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because I've never heard until now of the idea of a Muslim knight.
Yeah.
Like we've all heard of the Christian knights, but I've not heard of that.
So I told you there's basically three main plots or narratives in this. Orlando and Angelica, Ruggiero and Bradamante. Ruggiero is a Muslim, and he loves Bradamante, who's a Christian, and Bradamante loves him. And throughout the book, they are trying to find each other, and they find each other and then have to separate for a time and find each other. And it's all these quests people go on and conundrums and tournaments that they get involved in and obstacles. But as they find each other, eventually Bradamante says, you have to be baptized as a Christian and talk to my father. And he says, okay, I'm going to do it. But first he has to go do his duty to the Saracens, plausibly at least for a while, and to show his honor as a knight. He can't abandon his oaths as a knight. Chivalry even affected the Muslims, at least in this tale. The Muslims act almost entirely on the moral ethic of the chivalric Christians. It's all the same people. It's just that these happen to be from over there and they're Muslims. But they should become Christians, and we need to thrust them out of Europe because Europe is ours. But you don't have a lot, like today we have a lot of political hatred, political animosity. We're polarized, different parties, the left and the right, the liberals and the whatever. But back then, these people actually didn't seem to hate each other so much as they were all rivals for prowess and honor and courage. And it didn't really matter what side you were on. What mattered was, the gods mattered, who your god was, but also your oaths, your loyalties to the king or to whoever you swore oaths to. That's what mattered. And in that sense, it kind of bound everybody together in a chivalric code. Anyway, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here. So the book was written by Ludovico Ariosto in the early 1500s. It was written for Ippolito d'Este, and there was actually a book written before this one. It was called Orlando Innamorato, Orlando in Love. It sounds like immorality in English. Orlando Innamorato means Orlando in amor, in love. So he's in love. And it's funny, this book was not finished. It was written by a guy named Matteo Maria Boiardo. And he wrote it for Ippolito d'Este. And he tried to write this as this tale of love for Orlando falls in love with Angelica. And Ronaldo also falls in love with Angelica. And somehow throughout the tale, they all get mixed up, and then the gods intervene. And I say the gods because this book, I told you, it's classical mythology, it's Christian era, medieval world, and it's sci-fi fantasy. Well, just as though there's the Christian God and there's like angels and stuff and priests, there's also Cupid and Eros and Aphrodite and discord and jealousy and pride and all these gods and goddesses. Well, they show up and ruin the whole thing by creating this well that when it like alternates in what happens to, like if one person drinks from it, that person falls in love, but the next person that drinks from it hates. So they all drink from it in their turn.
Oh my goodness.
Orlando drinks from it. He falls in love, even more in love with Angelica. Angelica drinks from it, hates Orlando. Then Ronaldo drinks from it, falls in love with Angelica. And then they all just chase each other everywhere, and she hates both of them. He died. Matteo Maria Boiardo, he died before he could finish that book, Orlando Innamorato. Ludovico Ariosto came along and wrote Orlando Furioso. Orlando Furioso is the fury of Orlando, and it's like Achilles' fury. Achilles was angry and he threw the whole thing out of whack. Mm-hmm. That's exactly like this book, except it happens in his own way, and it happens because of love for a woman, not the death of a friend. That's a big difference here. It's for love of a woman, Angelica, and she is alternately in love and out of love because of Cupid's arrows and this well, and because of other things that happen. There's like fate and destiny. And
so that explains the character of women. See, it's not our fault.
Yes. That's exactly it. It's not your fault. Women are not at fault. That's right. Okay, so let me try to go through the book. The book is so massive. There's 40-something cantos. Each of them, it's like watching an entire season of a show. So for instance, a lot of writers in the last several decades have continuously tried to write these complex narratives. Like one example, not the greatest example, but one is the Game of Thrones books, where George R.R. Martin tried to write this increasingly complex web of characters that's just like it follows 15 or 20 different characters each chapter, and you have to weave this complex narrative. It's kind of confusing. Well, this book does the same thing, except it's in the 1500s. It's long ago. This is amazing. This book was written so long ago, and I see so many things happening after it that are like, this guy, Ludovico, did this long ago. And the technique back then, I learned this word, I have to say it. It's in French, okay? The technique is called entrelacement. And it's basically, it's interweaving all of these tales. And you see it in the very first canto when various people kind of run in and out of the scene or the narrative.
Sounds like it means many enterings.
Interweaving is how I think. I don't know what the official definition is, but you're weaving things in and out of itself, kind of like when you crochet or whatever, you sew something and it's all woven in and out. Okay, so the three main plots again, Orlando and Angelica, Ruggiero and Bradamante, Charlemagne and Agramante. Let me just tell you who these people are. Orlando is kind of like Siegfried in any of the Volsung sagas, or he's like Achilles in the sense of he has superhuman strength. He can rip trees out of the ground. He can bend steel. His skin is impenetrable except for like one little spot on him somewhere that nobody knows about. I mean, it's the same sort of thing.
The heel, the center of the back.
Yes. And he's really strong. He's in love with Angelica. Angelica has superhuman beauty. So does a lot of women. Isabella, Bradamante, and Marfisa, and other women. Alcina is another one. There's a lot of women in this tale. Not all, but a lot of the women in this tale are treacherous. Oh my gosh. And it's so bad that Ludovico sometimes stops and he turns to the court of D'Este as he's singing and he says, "Please pardon me, my ladies. Not all women are like this, I tell you." Yes, so Angelica is treacherous. I can't help but think, like, Orlando pursuing Angelica, it's so bad what happens with he and her. He's furious. He becomes furious, furioso. Bradamante, though, is noble and virtuous, and she and Ruggiero are the ancestors of the D'Este house.
Oh.
They become the ancestors. And Ruggiero, by the way, was a Saracen, if you remember. He's the Saracen, but he converts. However, he's also the heir of the House of Troy from the Trojan War. So like this story ties back to Troy, and there are people who have Hector's armor and they fight over it. So it's real and serious in the story that these people are from noble lineage and they're virtuous, and they go on to birth this virtuous house. Because Bradamante was faithful to Ruggiero the whole time, and he to her. Anyway, those are the stories, and then Charlemagne and Agramante, and it's the Christians fighting the Muslims, and those are the two generals, the two main kings that are leading everything. Yeah, so one of the things that really interested me about this story was that it's colorful, funny, witty, joyful, adventurous, and in fact, at the beginning of the tale, he says that this is meant to be enjoyed. You're meant to sit back and listen to this sung, and it's a joy to listen to. It's happy. It's supposed to be like, yay, we're going on this adventurous tale. And it's interesting because every time Hollywood tries to portray the Middle Ages or the ancient world, it's dull and drab and bleak. Every single time, whether it's Monty Python, which wasn't Hollywood, to the latest Odyssey film. There's a new one coming out about the Odyssey. And if you look, and people have commented on this already, their armor, you can see some of the pre-screenings that are being released. It's all just dull and drab colors everywhere. But the ancient Greek and classical world and the medieval world is extremely colorful. If you go to Rome today and look at the outfits of those guards, I forgot their names at the Vatican, it's like bright blue, bright red, bright orange stripes. It looks like a peacock. People dressed very colorfully back then, and it wasn't people walking around singing these monastic, sorrowful chants like in Monty Python or something. This was actually an extremely colorful, witty, funny, bantering, humorous world full of laughter and also sorrow. But like this is written again in the Renaissance period, but it's written about the medieval period. And you're reading it, it really is like going to a circus or a fair or something. There's bright lights and spinning things and loud noises and laughter everywhere. It's an amazing tale that's not at all like how Hollywood, even the Game of Thrones, for instance, if you happen to glance at any of the clips, you don't have to watch it, but just watch any of the clips on YouTube. Everything has this sepia toned, dull, drab, overcast sky. Everybody's cussing and spitting and scratching themselves and burping. That's not at all like this book, at all. There is betrayal, there's treachery, there's lying and murder, deceit, but there's also virtue and honor and worship and sincerity with regard to religion and love. But in the Hollywood portrayal, all of that is now sarcastic and fake, and nobody believes it because the medieval world is this jaded thing that people can't believe in anymore or something. I would really encourage people, go read this book and learn what early 1500s and even late 1400s Italians thought about their own world and the ancient world. Completely different portrayal in this book. There's sincere hierarchy in this, and I'm contrasting again with things like it's just coming to my mind, Game of Thrones, where nobody is sincere in the hierarchy. Everybody's like wincing when they have to call someone my lord. Like, my lord. They don't really believe in hierarchy themselves. You can tell it's a bunch of 21st century Hollywood egalitarian-minded liberals playing these roles that they detest. But actually, if you go back to in this time, hierarchy was sincere, courtesy was sincere, honor, chivalry, even sexual passion. It was something that was real and tangible and not fake and full of lust. There's a difference between like honorable sexual passion and then just raw lust like you see in the films today that has nothing of actual depth of passion in it. You find that in this book. By the way, I would say for young people, probably don't read this book because there is sexual passion in this book. They don't describe the motions and all this stuff, okay? But there are some beautiful women that enchant, and they talk about the enchantment. And it gets pretty steamy a few times, but then it cuts off and says, let's leave now. Because Ludovico even says, like, I'm singing in front of the court, we want to keep it PG-13 if we can here. So he moves on to other things. But it's just above the level of what I would give for students in schools, for instance. I'd wait until after you're an adult reading this. You can judge for yourself. So there are some themes in the book. I'm going to kind of tell the tale a little bit, but the tale is so broad and vast. Again, there's three main tales. Ariosto chases Angelica all over the world, literally all over the world. Bradamante and Ruggiero chase each other, and then Charlemagne and Agramante fight each other. And that's how the story goes. So I'm going to tell the tale generally and then get into different themes in different episodes because there's really so much. Along the way, throughout the story, there are these side quests. So basically what happens is Charlemagne is fighting Agramante, and he knows that Orlando is the baddest warrior that he has. Charlemagne does. But Orlando has been chasing Angelica, shirking his duty to fight the Saracens. And Ronaldo has been chasing. Ronaldo's a great warrior also. So Charlemagne captures Angelica and says, I will offer her to whichever of you proves the greater soldier in the battle against the Saracens.
That's great.
And yeah. But the thing is, the whole battle collapses and the Christians actually lose that battle. They don't lose the war, but they lose that battle. And then Angelica flees and escapes from Charlemagne as everybody is routed. And so that's basically the beginning. And it's kind of like humorous. Like, they lost, she flees, oh no, Ronaldo loses his horse. And then it explains how dishonorable it was for a knight to run without a horse.
Oh,
but love compels him, and he almost flees like a coward. He doesn't flee like a coward, but almost from the battlefield to go chase Angelica. So this contrast of a woman, for love of a woman, men will do all kinds of stupid, ridiculous things, like leave their brothers in arms, leave the battlefield, leave their mission, and go chase all over the world. And as they chase her to get her back, they run into all kinds of side quests. Like, they come upon this woman who was assaulted and offended, and then they have to go save her because that's what knights do. And then they get involved in like the whole history. You learn about the history of this town, this French town. And I don't know if it's real or not. It's not like a realistic retelling of the history of that town. It's just saying like a lady named Olympia was betrothed to somebody who fled her, and now the town wants to hang her because they thought this. And he has to go avenge her, but then they chain her to a rock, and he has to save her from the monster in the sea, kind of like St. George and the Dragon.
Perseus and Andromeda.
Or Perseus and Andromeda. And that happens a few times, by the way. So it's like that happens several times. There are these side quests that come about. And a whole canto sometimes is devoted to that side quest. So it deters from the main story. Like, you want to get back to Ronaldo chasing Angelica or Orlando chasing Angelica, but you can't because they got stopped in this town that deterred them for a while, and you're just there with them.
I do have a question. You keep saying Orlando, but then you also say Ariosto. Is that the same person?
Ludovico Ariosto is the author.
Oh, that's okay. Ariosto is the author.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Ludovico Ariosto.
Okay.
Ariosto with an A. That's why we're doing this now
okay.
in the early part of the podcast. His last name is an A.
Okay.
Ludovico Ariosto. So the theme here that you see right off the bat is love versus duty. Love seems to divert people from military duty, and vice versa. Duty diverts you from love. And there's these two themes that contrast with each other, and people are kind of pulled in one direction or the other as they pursue their love or their duty, their oaths they have to fulfill. And sometimes people are chastised for that. So you need to get back and do your duty and stop chasing your love around. She'll be okay, don't worry. And of course, she's not okay. She's being tortured by a dragon or something. Yeah. So in pursuit of a woman, many knights are diverted from fighting for Charlemagne and Agramante. Like, both sides have these derelict, and it's the best knights, like the best ones,
of course,
that are off fighting. It's a contrast, though, from the ancient world where men, like, people like to reinterpret the Iliad, for instance, like it was a battle for the love of a woman. No, it was more of like a battle between a bunch of guys for 10 years for Menelaus' one woman, but they all swore an oath to protect her. They weren't all pining for her beauty. It was different than the medieval world, which really is this more romantic, passionate, pure love affair thing. It is different. Another theme here is that it's a full, true fairy world, completely in every single way. Humans interact in the world of enchantment. There's so much enchantment in this world, and nobody thinks it's a joke. Nobody's like, oh, haha, there's a flying horse that's also kind of this eagle thing, but we know that that's fake. Nobody thinks, wow, that's crazy. That never happens, like this flying horse hippogriff thing with a wizard that has a magical shield that can like stun you from the air. everybody thinks, oh, we need to hide. Do you see what I mean? Like they take it seriously in the story. It's a fairy world. It's a world not of little sprites that live in flowers and things. It's not of little dwarves or something. It's real humans in an enchanted world, which is interesting to me because the Christians in the Middle Ages and even in the Renaissance period had no problem at all with Christianity subsisting in a world of wizardry and magic and all kinds of monsters and wizards and witches and things, real things like this, completely interacting with each other. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But there's a flying horse, as I mentioned. It's kind of like, they call it a hippogriff. It's like Pegasus, but it's not entirely a horse. There's magical castles. So there's this wizard called Atlante, and he flies the hippogriff. He creates this castle with no seams. It's entirely made of steel. Just one piece like jutting out of the ground, kind of like the Tower of Orthanc or something in Lord of the Rings, but except it's steel. Completely, there's no entrance to it. You can only get in through flying with his hippogriff. And he imprisons all kinds of knights there. And Bradamante seeking Ruggiero. So Bradamante is a woman, by the way. And she's one of the baddest warriors around. In fact, at the very beginning, it's so funny. So I'll tell this, the very first canto. Charlemagne tried to get Orlando and Rinaldo to come fight for him. So he captured Angelica and said, whoever is the best warrior in this battle will get her. Of course, everybody's defeated. So that promise goes out the window. And then Angelica escapes. Well, Rinaldo loses his horse, but he chases after her after the battle anyway. And he chases after her, and she comes to this stream, and there's a Saracen knight, and his name is Pharaoh. She encounters him, and then Rinaldo runs up, panting. He's like, you there, release that lady. She doesn't belong to you. And then Pharaoh and Rinaldo fight. They dually fight each other, and Angelica flees. She gets out of there again. I know, so it's like, it's this rabbit chase. The whole book is like this. You are galloping through all of Europe, all of North Africa, all of the Middle East, all of India, parts like islands, the magical islands. So they fight each other, and she flees, but then they realize, hey, she's getting away, and we're fighting each other, and we're not going to catch up with her. So from love of her and chivalric duty, they swear an oath to meet again in battle, but to have a truce for now, Saracen and Christian have something that unites them, which is chivalry, because she's now unprotected. The one we love, she may fall to danger. So Ronaldo gets on the back of the horse with Pharaoh.
No.
And he's like holding on to Pharaoh. They were just beating each other senseless. And then they like ride off together on the same horse. Yeah.
Oh dear.
They go chase her.
I'm feeling bad for Angelica. Okay.
Hold on. They go chase. No. Do not feel bad for her.
Okay.
Oh no. She is treacherous. I'm not going to say what I think of her.
Okay, but they're kind of asking for it. Like, let her go.
This woman, what she does to Orlando is so bad. But you know what? It kind of wasn't her fault because Cupid finally had enough of her antics and just shot her with a bunch of arrows.
Oh dear.
As she was taking care of this wounded knight. And then that was the end. That was the end of her, being chased by others. But anyway, here's what's funny in the first canto. Ronaldo and Pharaoh, they are on the horse.
Riding into the sunset.
Yeah, and they come to a fork in the road, and they think, which way did she go? So they say, Sir Knight, we shall depart here. Actually, they don't talk like Thomas Mallory's book. Thomas Mallory's book, it's like, good Sir Knight, the most worshipful there ever was. And it's hard. It's also not very descriptive of the landscape or even of people's motives and passions.
Yeah, it's very stiff.
This book is not. This book reads easily. It's descriptive, not just of like physical things to see, but people's feelings and motivations. It describes what's happening in people's minds too. It's good. It's really good. Anyway, so they decide we'll part here, but meet again later to battle each other whenever we get this done. Well, Pharaoh rides this way, and he comes exactly back to where he started. So it's just, he goes in this big stupid circle, and then Ronaldo runs off. The scene moves to Angelica, who has run as far as she can. So she hides under this sort of like overhanging grove of bushes and trees, and she's kind of resting. And she wakes up to hear the sound of somebody weeping. And it's a man, and she peers out, and it's actually King Sacripante, who is a Muslim, who came from the East, hearing of her beauty, seeking her, and he's in this grove, like outside of her bushes, and he's like, oh, woe is me.
This is too much.
What shall I do? And then she thinks, this is what she thinks. I can use him for protection. I'll go out there and say how happy I am to see him. I mean, she completely uses him, and she pops out, and he thinks it's an apparition. I mean, he's afraid suddenly, and she says, fear not, fair sir. I am here at your behest, and all this stuff. And he's like, fair damsel, I'd here swear, Here's something else that's funny. Right after they all figure things out and, okay, take me to safety or whatever, another knight comes up, all in white. Nobody knows who it is. But of course, knights can't pass without being challenged. And so Sacripante says, stand back, Angelica. I will do my first deed to prove my loyalty to you. And he goes and jousts this other knight and gets completely mopped by this other knight in front of Angelica, just unhorsed, thrown on the ground. His shield breaks, his arm breaks. And the other knight rides off. It turns out the other knight was Bradamante, a woman who unhorsed Sacripante. Yeah, Bradamante. Look, this book, this is something else. You should read these old books because people will say things about the ancient world like, oh, it's a patriarchal world. Women were seen as weak and help. Bradamante is like the baddest warrior in the book, other than Orlando, who just happens to be supernatural. And there's another woman called Marfisa. She's also extremely powerful physically. She fights people, unhorses them all the time. There's actually some funny scenes with Marfisa later on in the book where people two guys show up and they talk about her like she's this helpless damsel, like you would think, like whichever of us kills the other takes her. And they're like, oh, shut up, you don't even, and she's like, I'll fight both of you right now. And she does and beats them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so Ariosto, who's singing this tale, again, he sometimes turns to the audience and has these monologues to the audience. And in a few of them, he praises women's virtue, he praises their wisdom, he praises their strength. And he actually names some of the ancestors of the D'Este house and says, like the female ancestors, and says, this is how great this woman was. And so he actually brings up a lot of modern talking points, in other words, a lot of modern talking points that women are strong too, and women can be independent too, and we're not just pretty damsels in distress, we don't need safe. Like all of that is in this book. It's just not like feminist or whatever. It's not part of the liberal, egalitarian, politically charged last couple hundred years. It's over 500 years ago. And all of those same talking points are there.
I think this is helping me understand the Italian woman stereotype.
Yeah. I was thinking that too. This was written in Italy. Mm-hmm. This was not written in England.
Right.
It couldn't have been written in England.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, and all the Arthurian legends, there's not a female knight that I can think of.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not.
Yeah, I mean, in the German legends, there was a strong woman, but not in the...
Yeah, there was Brunhild, who was strong in the German legends. But she was just one. There are several in this.
Wow.
There's some times in this book where interesting things happen. Like one of the most interesting parts in this book for me was a guy named Astolfo. Astolfo was the former lover of a lady named Alcina, who was a witch. And he was freed and he sailed away. This is in India. He sailed away and eventually came back to North Africa, where he landed for repairs and things. But he landed on the town that's basically all inhabited by women, only women. Just women. I think I told you about this. These women are the descendants from the survivors of Troy. So what happened long ago was the survivors of Troy, they fled, but then they were captured by some people and, children and later on down the line eventually. But at some point, all of the men betrayed all of the women in this little town. I think basically what happened was some warriors from another place came and they were all the most handsome, dashing warriors. And the women of the town fell in love with them and committed themselves to these warriors while they were there helping to put down the evil tyrants in the area. But once that was finished, the men took the women with them, but the men didn't really want the women. They're warriors, they're pirates. They're not wanting to be husbands and farmers. And so after a time, the women realized we're not wanted, and the men realized we don't want you, get off our ship. And so they just dumped them somewhere. Well, the women swore an oath led by one particular woman, the leader, never to rely on men again, never to have men again, never to be led by men again. So they start their own, basically, this is like feminism. Like we don't need men, we can do everything for ourselves. They start their own city of just women. Except they realize after a time, we're gonna die if we don't reproduce. So they come up with a rule, or set of rules. And this is everyone who lands on our shores, because the winds and the waves kind of drove ships occasionally to their shores to out of course. They would capture the ship and they would kill everyone on board who was male, unless that male could fight 10 knights and then essentially marry and take to bed 10 women the same night after. If you could perform this feat, you would live and become like the breeding stud for this town. So it's extreme. Like, first of all, these women fell in love with these pirate alpha chads, essentially, who then dumped them. And they became so bitter that they become uber feminists, essentially creating a feminine, gynarchal political situation that's extremely, extremely hypergamous and polygamous, because that guy would basically be the husband of many women and be their husband and
slave.
Reproduce. Yeah.
That's awful.
And so they basically would kill any males that were born or found who couldn't perform like this. Until one time, Astolfo came and he had a crew with him. He had Marfisa with him. Marfisa actually defeated the male alpha guy. And then they all decided to break out of there and flee. But anyway, it's an interesting piece of like side quest in this tale. As the rest of the story goes on, they stop off at this place for a while where it's led by women. How is it unlike other tales? I mean, this is what Jason the Argonauts found when they landed on that island of all women. The women had been jilted and treated unfairly by their husbands, so they killed all the men, and then they realized, oh no, we're all going to die. And then they invite all these Argonauts to stay for a year and a half until Hercules says, guys, this is ridiculous. We got to get out of here and go pursue our mission. We're supposed to be on a mission, not dilly-dallying here, doing nothing. And so they eventually leave. But it seems like a theme that prior to feminism, like people today are realizing things like people are saying things today like we shouldn't have given women the vote or something. And women, when they vote, they do decivilizational damage to the body politic and all this stuff. Well, whether that's true or not, this was actually being said long ago, like a fictitious society run entirely by women, according to Ludovico Ariosto and according to who wrote Jason the Argonauts? I'm forgetting as Apollonius of Rhodes. Basically, it's one where they kill or enslave all the men, they create extreme hypergamy and polygamy, and then eventually it collapses anyway. I mean, that's basically what you see in this story. Now, again, after this, he turns to the audience and says, I'm not saying all women do this, House of D'Este, no. But it's interesting how women fare in this book. They're not all helpless damsels in distress. Some of them are extremely beautiful, yes, they are. But even the ones that are beautiful are treacherous. Like I mentioned Angelica kind of using Sacripante in the first canto, the very first canto. She uses Sacripante treacherously. Well, later on in the story, she gets captured by these pirates who fuel this town with damsels to feed this beast that will ravage their countryside if they don't give them a damsel once a month or something. And after they gave all the town's damsels, they don't have any more, so they hire these pirates to go find other damsels, other beautiful women, to feed this beast thing. And so these pirates find Angelica and chain her to a rock. Well, I think it was Ruggiero, so not Orlando who loves her and not Rinaldo who loves her, but Ruggiero who loves Bradamante. Ruggiero was questing about and saw Angelica, and he saved her. And he saved her with all this crazy stuff that he had, a magical this and a magical ring and stuff. And he puts her down, and he's like, wow, isn't this great? And then she slips on the magical ring that he gave her, which makes her invisible, and she fled. And he's like, oh, treacherous woman, like I saved you. What in the world, I can't believe it. She just completely unthankful, flees. So you have beautiful damsels, you have treacherous women, you have powerfully strong women that can fight the best of knights, which, by the way, that was also in Game of Thrones. In Game of Thrones, there was one woman, I don't remember her name, but she was this tall, blonde woman. Not very beautiful at all, but strong. And basically, she's like the Bradamante figure. If anybody has watched that or read that book, she is basically the same sort of person in the Game of Thrones. She's honorable, she's chaste, she's noble, she has a sense of duty, except in this book, Bradamante is very beautiful too. So that's that. But there's lots of women. There's also sorceress women and all kinds of things. I can just go round and round in circles and tell you stories all day from this. So forgive me if I'm running you through a loop, but that's how it feels reading the book. It doesn't feel like you're making linear progress. So again, there's 3 stories. Orlando is chasing Angelica, and so is Ronaldo, but they get side quested a lot. And so it's almost like they're not chasing her. Like every 5th stanza or 5th canto, oh, now they're chasing her again. There's also Ruggiero and Bradamante, same exact thing. They're trying to find each other, and sometimes they do, but then they get split back up for a while. And in the end, things work out for them in the end. I won't tell you how. Things work out for them in the end. It's like, okay, good, there is some resolution to all of these plots. It's for Ruggiero and Bradamante because they have to give birth to the House of D'Este later on. They're the progenitors. And then there's Charlemagne and Sacripante. So in the background, Charlemagne's like, yeah, stop questing, come back and help me fight. So all these people, the warriors, as they're out questing for a few cantos, eventually they're like, oh yeah, I need to get back and help Agramante. And they come back. Okay,
those are 2 different kings, Agramante and Sacripante.
Yeah, Sacripante. There's a lot of kings. There's Radamonte, he's a king. There's a lot of people who are kings. But there's some, kind of like Agamemnon, he was a king, Achilles was a king, Ajax was a king.
Menelaus, yeah.
Yeah, except Agamemnon was the king over all of them. So Agramante is the king over all the Saracens, even though they're kings within his host. And same thing with Charlemagne. So there are kings within kings. I'll get back to some of the tales and stories here, but I want to go with some of these themes that are more broad. So I mentioned there's a mix of classical and Christian themes. Here's a few examples. Saint Michael the Archangel is commanded by God through the prayers of some of his saints on the side of the Christians to come help. So God commands Saint Michael the Archangel to go stir up discord, the goddess, discord.
Oh, that is interesting.
To go and harm the camp of the Saracens. What's funny though, is that Michael has to go find discord, and he finds her in a monastery stirring up contention among the friars and monks. Yes, and the priests. Oh, no. Yeah, they're all disputing among each other as literally Christian civilization is in jeopardy. Discord is there. And he has to whip discord up and say, go over here. You are now in the service of God. Go over here. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. But the thing is, when Ludovico says that, the author who's singing this, he turns again and he has these sort of monologue disquisitions where he says, too often we fight each other when we should be fighting the enemy. Too often we should be in prayer when we're in, he says these sorts of things, so he's making like a point. That's one example. St. Michael also stirs up pride and jealousy. Some of these other Greek and Roman deities, they don't just say he stirs up pride among the people. No, he stirs up pride itself as this deity thing. So you have this blend. Another blend is Bradamante is, I think this is the 2nd canto or 3rd. She is pursuing Ruggiero. Ruggiero is captured by Atlante, the wizard who has the hippogriff. He flies on this hippogriff. He has a lance. He has a shield that when it's uncovered, it shocks and blinds you and stuns you and you fall to the ground. So he's literally this flying lance, and he darts down and pokes at you with his lance. It's amazing how it describes it. And she goes and tries to fight this thing. But before she gets there, on the way, she's kind of betrayed, and this dwarf pushes her off a ledge. And she falls, but she's stunned, but she's okay. And when she wakes up, she's like at the bottom of a cliff, and there's an opening. There's a cave. And she goes into the cave, and there's this nymph, this cave nymph named Melissa, who guards the tomb of Merlin.
What?
Yeah. Melissa, this cave nymph, is guarding the tomb of Merlin. And Bradamante says, where am I? And Melissa begins to prophesy, this is amazing, of basically Bradamante's glorious future, her illustrious future with, like, you will find Ruggiero, you will marry him, you will have children. Here's your children. And it's basically like when Aeneas went into the underworld and his dad, this is in the Aeneid, Virgil's basically writing, Aeneas goes in the underworld, sees his father, and his father shows him all of the future of his posterity, all of the great kings and Caesars and leaders, and the glory of Rome to come. That's exactly what happens for Bradamante here. But it happens for Bradamante, for a woman. Like, it's interesting how male, female, it's not just a bunch of men. She prophesies, she passes them, people in front of her like ghosts, and she sees their faces. And Merlin himself, he's dead, but he can still prophesy, like his grave can prophesy or something. So his grave prophesies sort of the same stuff, like telling her where to go after this and how to save Ruggiero, what to do, how to find this, how to defeat the wizard with the shield. So basically, this is told by an Italian in the 1500s in Italy, which is Catholic. And it's completely just interweaving this pagan mythology. Completely fine with that. She goes and she meets these priests along the way as well. There's a lot of examples of this where Merlin and the witches foretell Christian deeds. Like, you're going to make a great Christian house.
Oh, yeah.
That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say here. Yeah, like they're going to be great Christians and do great deeds for Christendom and have great honor and glory and be praised in heaven for this. And it's literally this nymph and this wizard prophesying this stuff.
Have you thought about how this compares to Dante? Because wasn't that the 1400s?
Yeah.
So that would have been pretty close. And he had a lot of the same weaving in of classical characters and things in his. Yeah, they have no problem. And this is, again, proof of Western civilization as a thing, because we brought all of this together in one body, one story, one narrative. It's not like that was over there, the pagans over there and the Christians over here. No, it's all one world. One world. Other examples of this are when Christians, for instance, Christians fight over and wear the armor of Hector. There are people who have Hector's armor, like Hector of Troy. Right. His armor still exists and people fight over it. So they see themselves as living in the world of Hector, even though we think, Hector's that's like 1000 BC. Well, to them, it's like, this is the same world. It's the exact same world. Whatever happened then happens now. The gods that were then, the magic, the powers, the enchantment, the wizardry, all of it. Also, there's a ton of classical recapitulations. I already mentioned Perseus and Andromeda. That exact thing happens. The guy's on this flying hippogriff. He opens the mouth. He uses a lance. He saves the woman. He gets venerated by the town. These sorts of things. Except now it's Christians doing them. There's also one part. I mentioned Astolfo. Astolfo is one of the characters in this. He's a great warrior. He actually has dinner with St. John, Elijah, and Enoch. And where does that take place?
They take him to see the fates spinning everyone's lives on pure or on base threads as their destinies merit. So think about this. Astolfo has dinner with St. John, Elijah, and Enoch, and they take him to go see the fates. The fates. The fates belong to the Greco-Roman mythology. And St. John, Enoch, and Elijah go over there and they're like, hey, fates, what y'all doing? And they go see what's happening. They go show Astolfo these fates. And when they see the fates, there's a lot of prophecies of the house of Deste. Now, it's not the first time it happens with Bradamante, or it's not the only time it happens with Bradamante in the cave. It happens many times where it's prophesied again and again. In fact, there's another time when Bradamante meets Melissa, and Bradamante says, you told me all about the great heirs of our house, but what about the women of the house? And then she goes on and says, they're the most illustrious, and she goes on this whole canto, almost the whole canto, and prophesies about the illustrious women and all of the things that they're going to do. Some of them are famed for virtue, some for wisdom, some for prowess. And whatever it is for their time, it's this amazing prophecy. Well, the same thing here. There's the fates. Like even John, Elijah, and Enoch, recognize there are the fates, the spinning threads, depending on your virtue or your merit or whatever it is for you. You got a base 3, you got silver, or you've got just linen or flax or something. It could easily burn in the fire. That's interesting that they would mix that together.
It's also just those 3 characters, those 3 from the Bible. Mm-hmm. It would be fun to think about why those. Those.
Well, the reason this happened with Astolfo is because later on in the story, basically about halfway through the story, I think Canto 20 or 21, Angelica falls in love with this other guy. She's struck by Cupid's arrow. She falls in love with him. She marries him. They consummate the marriage. And they have a honeymoon, very wonderful and nice. And they inscribe their names on, they basically had their honeymoon kind of in a grove, and kind of like Dido and Aeneas. And then they inscribed their names on it, and they went to a nearby hermitage or something and left a token of faith there that Orlando had given Angelica, this little bracelet, and she left it there to give it to the hermit to say, thank you for housing us in our time of joy. Orlando comes upon this spot, sees the inscribed names, and starts to talk himself out like, it's not my Angelica. It can't be my, and he goes to the hermitage and sees the bracelet. And I remember the scene vividly because he's thinking in his mind like, no, it can't be her. And then the hermit comes in and says, what's your story? And he tells him his. And then the hermit says, I just had a wonderful time with some visitors. And he tells him about the visitors. It was Angelica and this other guy that she married and consummated the marriage with. And Orlando is he's shocked. He's shocked. Like he doesn't even know what he's hearing. He lays down on the bed and he's laying in the hermitage. And then he has the thought, this is probably the bed that they, and he just like flies up. He's like poof off the bed, like, he just starts, and he loses his mind. He loses his mind. And he becomes, this is where he goes mad.
Mad in both senses?
Yes, absolutely. He's mad, like he's off his rocker, and he's furious. And this is like Lancelot when Guinevere shamed him and he went mad for several days or even like a year or something. He just he threw his armor, threw off his clothes, and ran wild into the woods and just went doing all kinds of tragic, crazy, bestial deeds for like a year. People had to calm him down and capture him and put him in a stable. And people don't talk about this story of...
Yeah, I've never heard that part.
Yeah,
wow.
Guinevere shamed him and said, you were unfaithful and unloyal to me or something. And he lost his mind because his woman dismayed him. And the same thing or a similar thing with Achilles when Patroclus was killed. It wasn't for a woman. Mm-hmm. It was for his cousin, his brother, whatever Patroclus was, his nephew. And he went mad. He went mad, blind, bull, raging mad. I can't do anything other than fight and kill or whatever. That was Achilles' rage. His rage wasn't only, I'm upset because Agamemnon took Briseis from me. I'm upset because of Patroclus and I go on a rampage now. And I won't listen to any appeals for decency or chivalry or some code of honor. That's what Orlando, so this is Orlando Furioso doesn't actually start until Canto 20 or 21, his fury. And he goes rampaging through the rest of the story.
This reminds me of Kriemhild. The book was kind of motivated by her fury.
This is the Nibelungenlied.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's like everything that happens was because of her fury over this.
Yeah, her fury. And that doesn't start till halfway through the book or something too.
Right,
fury.
but it just, in the end, it just keeps getting worse and worse. But it's all because of that fury that motivates.
Yeah, the fury. It's a real poignant scene though. And a lot of this, if you can get through the story, because again, it's like you're reading 3 stories that have that entrelacement, they interweave. And then within those 3 interweaving stories, you have tons of side quests where for an entire canto or 2 or 3, you're off not actually following the story now, but you're off doing something else. It's like a really big video game or something where the character has a quest to save the world or something. But along the way, you have to do 50 side quests. That's what this is. It's really fun. You just need to pace don't try to burn through this at all. And keep a character list next to you because the names are all in Italian, and you can mix them up. So I'll tell you another story here. It's pretty funny. It's so another side quest story. So Bradamante has a brother, a twin brother named Ricciardetto. And they look exactly alike, okay? And there was one time where Bradamante, the baddest warrior around, she looks like a dude in the saddle, right? With the armor on and everything. For some reason, she had her hair shorn in this event. And she was fighting, and for the sake of this castle, and the damsel of the castle, her name was Fiordalisa. And Fiordalisa fell in love with Bradamante. Bradamante is a woman.
Oh, no.
But Fiordalisa doesn't know that Bradamante is a woman. She just thinks, this is the bravest knight I've ever seen. So doughty and full of prowess and honor and courage on the field. And so Fiordalisa, Bradamante takes her helmet off, but it looks like a dude from far away, you know? And so Fiordalisa is just enamored with her thoughts of this guy who's actually a girl. Okay, look, it's not inappropriate. Okay, this part's not inappropriate. So Bradamante eventually gets out of there. And Fiordalisa is just like distraught with, where is my noble ward? Don't know the person's name, don't know anything. Bradamante gets herself out of there because she realizes, I'm not a guy. This is not going to go well. Like I'm a woman, you know, like I can't go in there and tip my hat to the fair lady whose castle I just saved like a good knight should, you know, like I saved your castle, give me a kiss on the cheek or something like that. You know, maybe we get married. I can't do that because I'm a woman and this is not going to work out. So she leaves and Fiordalisa's like, where is my, well, Ricciardetto was not there at all, but he hears of Fiordalisa's beauty and that Fiordalisa is madly in love with Bradamante and wants to marry and give her the castle. And Ricciardetto is like, I look exactly like my sister. So he puts his armor on and goes out there and says, it is me, I am back, you know, and they basically, you know, get married and everything, you know, and he keeps it to himself. It eventually comes back to bite him in the end, but the whole story is kind of comic like that. It's very Italian in that sense. Like the Germans couldn't have written a fun-loving, joyful, like the whole court is laughing at this as he's being told. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're having a great time hearing this. The English, I don't know if anything funny happened in the Arthurian tales at all. I mean, maybe something funny happened.
Right. No, a lot of this, though, is reminding me of Shakespeare.
It's like Shakespeare. That's exactly right. In fact, there are some examples, some things that happen here. I'm going blank at the moment, but it's like just complete clownish foils.
Yeah, Comedy of Errors or Midsummer Night's Dream. Just all of those. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Something happens and it is almost there, but because of just some comic tragedy, it all falls apart and you're like, this is crazy.
Right.
I can't believe
this happened. Or even the 12th Night with the twins, the brother and the sister that look exactly like.
Yeah. Well, this was before Shakespeare and this was so famous of a story that there's no way Shakespeare couldn't have known about it. Absolutely.
That's amazing.
No way. He could not have read this.
And it would have been recent, wasn't he, the 1500s?
I think 16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, but that's still recent.
Close enough. Yeah. Yes, close enough.
Wow.
Yep. Okay, I mentioned there's a mix of classical and Christian themes. I talked about Astolfo. I didn't mention he was with St. John, Enoch, and Elijah, but because Orlando went mad, okay? He went mad and he can't be stopped. He's literally invincible. I mean, like Achilles. He cannot be stopped. People think, how are we going to stop him? Well, somehow Astolfo figures out I need to go. He gets advice that he needs to be taken to the moon. He needs to be taken to the moon.
Of course.
Because the moon, no, listen, this is the 1500s, okay? He needs to go to the moon. He needs to somehow get with these ancient saints and they take him to see the fates, but then they take him to the moon. And the moon is where lost things go. If you lose something, it goes there. And it could be something material, it could be something spiritual, it could be something like your lost love. If you fall out of love with your spouse, for instance, let's say, like your love is on the moon and you need to go to the heavens to recover your life.
I'll fly to the moon and back.
Yeah, I'll fly you to the moon and back. Fly me to the moon. Yeah.
I was thinking of the Savage Garden song.
Okay. Frank Sinatra, I think's got an edge on Savage Garden.
I don't like Frank Sinatra.
What?
Sorry.
Hold on.
Dean Martin all the way.
What?
Hey, he's Italian.
Okay,
Dean Martin.
look, I'll allow Dean Martin, but Savage Garden? Okay, we're going to have a conversation about that afterwards. We're going to play some, I think, like for Thanksgiving or Christmas, we're going to play some Frank Sinatra albums or something. Yeah. So anyway, so he goes to the moon to recover Orlando's lost wits.
Oh, wow.
He lost his wits. He lost his marbles. And this reminds me of, no, this is serious. Like, it reminds me of the, what is it called? Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. There's a theme of someone losing their marbles, and they're up there in Never Never World, and he has to go there and recover them.
Oh, there's also like his shadow and then the kiss. Like something about those things that they keep. Yes. They can't pin it down.
He goes to the moon to find these things, and these saints help him get there. So you have this interweaving of, this is like sci-fi mythology, classical mythology, Christian theology world. It's just a big swirl of all of it.
Wow.
Yes. There's also a mix of Muslim and Christian people. I already mentioned this. There's an overlap, though. They have like the same chivalry and knightly virtues. Love unites them in a common order, sort of like a mutual dance, the way they interact with each other. They have the same. Today, for instance, when Western troops go and fight Muslim troops, they don't all abide by the same codes of conventions and warfare. But back then, they did. At least according to this story, it was all kind of the same group of people. There seems to be an apolitical outlook for everybody. There's not really a hatred on either side other than just battle prowess. Like, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. But it's not, I hate the Muslims, I hate the Christians. And it's not really.
So you're saying it would almost be like the Italians versus the Germans.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Except it's very, very strong that there's a distinctly Christian European civilization. Very, like, at the same time, they don't hate each other because they're Muslims and North Africans. And yet, at the same time, there is a distinctly Christian European civilization. So Ronaldo, after the defeat, the beginning of the book, that battle, Charlemagne's defeated, but it's not over. He sends Ronaldo, like Orlando gets out of there and goes and chases Angelica. But he sends Ronaldo to England to go rally troops. And Ronaldo thinks, what?
Are you sure you have those characters right? Because previously you said it was Ronaldo who chased Angelica.
He did.
And that Orlando went to England.
He did. No, Orlando eventually went to England. Orlando eventually goes to England. And Ronaldo did initially chase Angelica. But he was told to come back, essentially. Okay. And then Charlemagne sent him to England. And he thinks, to England? No, I have to chase Angelica. And I don't want to be away. And so he goes to England on this long mission to go rally a bunch of troops. And as he does, Ariosto, Ludovico Ariosto, the singer, he goes through all it's like an epic list of all the kings of England, or the leaders of England and Scotland and the French and the Spanish and the Italians, like all of the houses, all of the names, he describes the flags and the banners and the standards and the knights and everything they bring to the battle. And it really does show that under the head of the summons of Charlemagne, gathering these forces, and they're all united to overthrow the Muslims, to get them out, to overthrow them. And then there's a few times where Ludovico Ariosto, the singer, he turns to Ippolito d'Este, in front of whom he's singing, and says, sort of like a rally, like, oh, that Christians today would go back to the Holy Land once more and free it from the Saracens and the Muslims and take it for Christ. So it's very strongly distinctly Christian, but not just like without ethnicity. Like, oh, no, that matters. Here's their names, here's their ancestry, here's their noble lineages, here's their houses, here's the crest, here's the banner, here's the standard, for everyone. And he does it several times throughout the book. For Bradamante's future males, for her future females, for all of England, for Scotland, for Spain, for France, for Italy. And it has a distinctly European and Christian theme to it. Very, very like unmistakable. I'm not like inferring this from something. I mean, he takes an entire canto just to go through what I'm talking about here. He also gives a future prophecy of these same kings uniting to overthrow vices. So later on, these kings, after we kick out the Muslims, then we're going to kick out vice. And he sort of personifies them like avarice and lust. These kings are not just going to be strong on the battlefield. They're strong in virtue. I just find that interesting that it's not the dynamic you would expect to meet with. For one, it's not fraught with the hatreds that are so often portrayed in the media today, where one side hates the other. However, nor is it lack of passion for your religion or your civilization. The modern world today presents you with this. The only way you can exist today is to have no passions for anything, no convictions or no identification with anything. Like the only way not to hate Muslims is, well, you just shouldn't be attached to Christianity that much. You can't be a really passionate Christian, a convicted Christian. The only way not to hate Arabs or foreigners is to have no Western civilization at all. Like we can't be Western. We can't be different than you if there are no differences. Mm-hmm. That's the way to do it today. In order for nobody to hate each other, we can't love anyone either. We can't love ourselves or our neighbors. We have to just kind of blandly love everybody, which means really loving nobody.
Right, we can't prefer.
Right. But in this book, you have on the one hand, these Christians and Muslims are fighting each other. But on the other hand, they don't really hate each other. In fact, they're united in their ideas of chivalry, honor, knighthood, and love, like the idea of passionate love, loyalty, oath-keeping. And they're also distinctly Christian and European, and they want the Muslims out. But not because they hate them, but because we're Europeans and we're Christians. That's why.
Right.
Not because we hate you, it's just this is ours. You know, if someone broke into my house, I don't hate that person. I don't have enough time to even get to know them to hate them. Mm-hmm. I want you out of my house.
Yeah.
That's what's happening here. I said this book was a true fairy world. It's also a true fantasy world. There are magical swords, durindane, they have names, they have powers, kind of like in Lord of the Rings or some video game, or even the Arthurian tales. You don't see this much in the Greco-Roman world, where swords and shields have their own enchantment. That comes later, but you do see it here. There are shields that people fight over. There are shields that have power, like Atlante's one, where it shines and it just stuns people.
There's the shield that Perseus uses to defeat Medusa.
Yes, you're right. It did have powers.
And there's like winged sandals.
You're right.
There's a few things.
There are some. You're actually right. I take it back. That happens here as well. There are horses that have special powers, not just the hippogriff one, but there are others that like, oh, that's so-and-so's horse. And the men fight over the horse, not because it's merely powerful, but because it has like super human or super horse magic or whatever. Yeah. There are special wells or special spots. Like they actually have other places where Merlin had enchanted things and it still has enchantment. Oh, wow. A little grove with some marble carvings with magic enchantment. And they go there and they hear some prophecies from Merlin at this spot. And then it helps them on their way.
It's interesting to me that they take Merlin like that,
yeah.
Out of England.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like it takes it's not just like, oh, there's English mythology and Norse mythology, and there's Russian and German. No, it's one huge swirling civilization. This is, again, why I say people will say, the scholars, the skeptics, the critics today will say there's no such thing as Western civilization. This book disproves them. It's one big mosaic of everything that you're seeing.
This is ours, all of it.
Yep. Yeah. There are relics that are religious and classical. So it's like Merlin's tomb and Hector's armor and some Christian relics that they meet, and they all have special powers, each one. So you have classical mythology, you have pre-Christian pagan Europe mythology with Merlin, and then you have Christian, let's call it Christian mythology with the relics, where the hair of John the Baptist or something, or John the Baptist, St. John or somebody shows up and you have dinner with him and he tells you some wise stuff. Mm-hmm. It's all of it, all together. So there's an overlap of Christian and pagan magic. Wizards and priests actually work together. They help each other. Ariosto has a few monologues I mentioned one of them, he talks about, he's actually condemning firearms and cannons. And he talks about how they're cowardly, and they allow some cowardly person to shoot a brave knight from far away.
Wow.
And he doesn't have to face him like a man. There's part of the story where, I don't remember which warrior it was, like either Ronaldo or Orlando or Ruggiero or somebody, but he goes and saves this town from a tyrant. Well, the tyrant had this like dragon fire thing. It turns out it's a cannon. It's a cannon. And the warrior was able to overthrow the tyrant, and the town was going to give him lots of money and things. And he said, no, just give me that cannon. I want that. And he takes it in his ship with him and throws it into the sea and curses it.
Oh my.
And says, this is unbefitting of a knight, of any knight. No man should use this. This is disgusting and terrible. And in the beginning of one of the cantos, Ludovico Ariosto has this tirade against firearms. In front of the house of Deste, he turns to the house of Deste and says, firearms are a coward's weapon, and men should face each other in battle and all this kind of stuff.
He's not wrong.
Yeah. It takes a lot of prowess and training and nobility to be able to fight someone face to face. Any coward can pull the trigger from behind shelter somewhere, can sneak attack you with a gun. And that's what a lot of these public assassinations are, for instance. It's some really scrawny, deranged, mentally messed up person walking in and shooting a bunch of school children or something. Like, it's a coward's weapon, really. And I don't mean everybody who uses it, but it's like the coward's weapon of choice. Let's put it that way.
Right. Well, it's also, it has its place. Like, as a woman, I'm weaker than any man I'll encounter. So it's nice to have one. But it makes me think, though, of the world wars, and how the fighting changed.
Yes.
Because of guns.
Yeah. World War I was really tragic because it was still, you had these old houses of knights and aristocrats charging in, thinking this was a battle like the old battles.
Yeah.
But then you had the age of the machine gun that could just completely decimate that. The same thing with some of the samurai stories in the 1800s, encountering Gatling guns and things. They didn't know what they were encountering until it was too late. And so now you don't have these warrior classes anymore. You do have strong men fighting battles today, but for the most part, like people say today, for instance, women shouldn't fight in wars. And I agree. However, the firearm has made it possible that women actually can fight in wars. Like physically, you could, because it doesn't take an Orlando or a Hector or Achilles or Ajax to be able to fight in a war today. It takes someone merely who can be on their feet all day in harsh conditions and pull the trigger. And I'm not saying that doesn't take any effort at all. It takes a lot of effort, but not like the old days where, like, for instance, I tell people this, today in the military, it's seen as really tough if you can march like 18 or 20 something miles with a backpack, big rucksack with your gun and go fight a battle. And that is tough. But the Battle of Marathon with the Greeks, from Athens to the plain of Marathon, it's like 24 miles or something. And what happened was the Persians landed on the shores of Marathon. The men of Athens left Athens, the soldiers, they marched all the way from Athens to Marathon. This is with armor and shields and weapons on foot. They marched. They didn't walk or they didn't ride anything. They went there with water and food also. There's no McDonald's along the way or something. There's no airdrop food coming for you later. They went there 25 or 4 miles. They walked, marched, and fought all day long. And then, because the Persians left and tried to sail around and come to Athens on the other side, then they marched back. So people usually think that the guy who ran from Marathon back to Athens and said, we won, and then he died, they think that's amazing. He ran 20-something miles. All of the warriors marched that distance twice in full armor, and they fought twice and won.
It's actually 26.2.
Yeah, 26.2, there and back. That is what the old world fight. I mean, it really took extremely hardy men to do this. And when the era of firearms came about, you can just shoot these guys from behind a bush. It takes no bravery to hide. Now, look, I'm not saying our warriors today aren't brave, but there are a lot of cowards that we fight that have no bravery. And they hide behind windows and buildings, behind churches and children, mosques or hospitals and things. And it's a cowardly way of fighting. And if you didn't have firearms, they could not do that. Like if you didn't have firearms, there could be, no firearms, no bows and arrows, just swords and spears, chariots and things, horses. There absolutely could not be room for cowards in that environment. And that's what Ludovico Ariosto says in the 1500s. There are 1,000 more things I could say about this book. I didn't talk about how one time a certain warrior went to Alcinna's island. And Alcinna's island, it's like Circe's island. It's just like Circe's island. When Odysseus shows up, Circe turned all the men to animals. It was like a pleasure island if you could withstand Circe herself. She would give herself to you, this beautiful goddess, the flower of everything, whatever, and so many delights and pleasures, and you would basically become this dandy with her. And that's what happens on Alcinna's island. And this was in India, by the way. All the way out in India, I think it was Ruggiero who actually did it. Ruggiero, who is supposedly the heir of Hector, the ancestor of the house of Ippolito d'Este, he went to Alcinna's island and she bewitched him. And the way it describes her, again, this is why I wouldn't recommend it for children. It's like almost rated R, the way it describes her. But the way it describes her, she enchanted herself. She was actually an old hag, like toothless. No. Yes, I mean, just this old witch. But she enchanted herself and the whole island to make it look like her skin was like rose red, lily white kind of, texture, and her hair and her breath and all this stuff. And Ruggiero completely forgot about Bradamante. And of course, Ludovico says, the person singing, he says, "We can forgive him though, it was an enchantment." This is not right, it's not good. But it was an enchantment. Okay, come on, it was an enchantment. And he eventually snapped out of it with the help of, I think it was Melissa, that nymph, because Melissa, the nymph, was helping Bradamante, who was in love with Ruggiero and vice versa. So Melissa went over there and snapped him out of it. But interesting thing that happened though, when Ruggiero was on this pleasure, it's clearly Circe's island. Like there were monsters and there were animals and even some like plants and things that used to be humans. And we know that because Ruggiero flew there on the hippogriff and landed there. You can't really control the hippogriff. It kind of flies wherever it wants. So that's how he got to the island. It just started flying and landed on this island. He chained it up to a tree and it pulled on the tree and kind of ripped the tree. And the tree says, don't do this to me. And it ended up being Astolfo. That guy Astolfo.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, who had been enchanted by Alcinna. And eventually he gets freed from his enchantment and goes on to those other adventures I talked about. Yeah, but Ruggiero goes into this island. He's warned about Alcinna. Like Astolfo tells him, the tree talks to him and tells him, beware of her, man. She's a wizard or a witch and she's going to bewitch you. And he goes there and he sees her and it doesn't matter. He gets bewitched. And he stays there and he ends up taking his armor off and no longer carrying his sword and his shield. And he wears flowing silks and lets his hair grow long, and they put oils in it and perfumes and stuff. And he becomes basically this pointless playboy, life of luxury. The calluses on his hands leave. He sleeps in late. He goes to bed late, alcohol and partying and it's like a pleasure island of entertainment and joys and all kinds of fun events that basically mean nothing. And then Melissa comes, kind of like with Aeneas and Dido. Aeneas is basically dilly-dallying in Carthage. And Hermes comes from Zeus and says, what are you doing? You need to go on your mission. And that's what Melissa does for Ruggiero, who kind of snaps out of it, dons his armor again, and goes and fights his way out. He has to fight his way out of the castle, essentially. So he's in there. It's kind of like Hotel California, the Eagles.
Check it any time of
you
year.
Can check anytime you want, but you can never leave. And so he tries to leave and he has to fight his way out. And then he eventually does flee. And Melissa helps to unenchant or break the enchantment of the island. And Alcinna goes from being like this almost engineered beauty thing.
AI beauty.
Yeah. It's exactly like that. Like her breath, the smell of her sweat and hair or whatever, like everything about it's like, this is crazy. And then suddenly she goes from that to being this old witch, toothless, bald, like shriveled skin. And Ruggiero's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, no. And he flees. He has to wash his mouth out with soap, so to speak, his soul. And
it's also icky. Sorry.
Yeah. It's Italian. It's Italian, okay? It's Italian. That's all I'm going to say. If you want to understand medieval or Renaissance Italy culture.
I bet they were eating a lot of gorgeous pasta.
What? That's that lady who says that. She calls herself the queen of pasta
and
or
the
something.
Peppercorns.
She calls herself the pasta queen. And then whenever she cooks something, she says, "Look at that. It's gorgeous. Just like you." Pasta queen.
Oh, I know this was India. They were eating curry. Ew.
Well, the funny thing is, though, all these people, when they go to India, it's clearly not India.
Yeah.
And it's just far away, but it's the same sort of culture, the same sort of people. Like the woman, Alcina, at least when she beautified herself, it wasn't an Indian beauty. It was a European beauty, very clearly European beauty. She could blush, for instance.
Right.
So anyway, that's the story. It ends, I'm not going to tell you exactly how it ends, but Ruggiero and Bradamante eventually, things settle down, they stop their questing, and they come together, and everything's blessed. He gets baptized, so it's legitimate. He's a Christian now. And so basically he does it for love. Like love leads to great folly, but it also leads to good things. It unites people across differences, and it brings people who are different together. But those differences go away. They don't remain. He becomes a Christian. He becomes baptized, and that it ends well for him. For Orlando, he eventually gets his wits back, and he calms down. He begins to be effective for Charlemagne's army. He leaves off chasing Angelica, because that's a lost cause at this point. She's gone with this other guy. They've already consummated their love. And that's kind of how the story ends. Yep.
Wow.
Wow, indeed. I don't feel like I've done the book justice, even with all of this. It's a tour de force. I feel like, again, I'm not giving everything that I could. There's a guy online who goes through this stuff I mentioned to you already. I forgot his name. I think it's Paul or something. But he's Italian, and he will tell you all of the things that you would not catch reading it in English. He will tell you more things that I can't give you in 1 hour of a podcast. He has one podcast per canto, and I think there are 40-something cantos. So it's definitely an epic novel. It's an epic. Then there's different books, right? I mentioned there's sort of categorization. There are bad books that you shouldn't read. In my opinion, for instance, Game of Thrones is a bad book, not just because it's immoral, but because it's just not written well. Like the writing is just, the story, I'm sorry, this is my opinion, it's just not good. It portrays this, the medieval world, bad. Everybody has the same attitude toward power, for instance. Like nobody is different, almost no one is different in regards to how they see power or hierarchy. Everybody is full of lust, like everyone. It's not good writing. So there's bad books, there are good books. Good books are things like Paddington Bear, Amelia Bedelia, or, it's a good book. It's good. It's not a great book, but it doesn't mean it's a bad book. These are good books. There are other books that are good, probably like some that just don't make it in the catalog, the main catalog of great books. A lot of good books out there. I think, for instance, P.G. Woodhouse's books are good books.
Okay.
They're not great books. They're not these memorable, epic books. Okay, but they're good books. They really are. I think Jules Verne's books are good books. They're not part of the great catalog, although I think maybe Jules Verne, some of his should. That's just my opinion. Then there are great books. Okay, so there's bad, good, great. Great books are like the Iliad. Mm-hmm. They're like Dante. They are Alexander Dumas, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I would even put Tolkien's books, some of them, as great books.
Jane Austen.
Then I would say, just to distinguish one more, there are epics.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I mentioned Homer, I mentioned the Iliad. I think that's an epic. It's not just a great book, it's an epic book. We can say, for instance, that Jane Austen is a great book. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call it an epic, though.
No, but I feel like you could almost do that with Tolkien, though. Mm-hmm. He's
Yeah, an epic, though, I think something with epics, it's like you're going on a cosmic adventure or something, some kind of big grand scheme, and not like Jane Austen, you just go back and forth between a few houses and a few people, and it's good. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's a great book, but I don't feel like my horizons have been expanded, that I've really been stretched in all of what humanity has to offer in the great courses of the extremes of human passions in almost every quarter. You don't get that. You don't get this great tour de force of that era, so to speak. That is what encapsulates something of the epic. And I think that this book is an epic. So it reaches beyond, it's not bad, it's not merely good, it's not merely great, it's epic. And the fact that I never heard about this, and I'm sure almost, most English speakers have never heard about this, and I can prove that by, there's not a lot of opportunity to find this book. It's not everywhere. It's in no classical catalog that I've heard of. It's not in Mortimer Adler's catalog, or it's not in schools anywhere. You can't find a lot of commentary on this. I had to go to this Italian guy who happened to be speaking in English, but half of his stuff's in Italian also, so you just have to figure it out. It's just not something that, English, we think that English is the dominant language in the world. That doesn't mean that we have captured everything that belongs to our Western culture. There are still many, many things that we don't know about because we are English speaking and not Portuguese speaking or German speaking or Italian speaking. This is one of them. I really think people should read it at least once in their life to see part of our own history. It's a great epic. Thank you for listening. If you're enjoying this content, please consider supporting the show by subscribing at arslibri.substack.com.